talk about that. All right, so those are the 4 levels. What are they again? Basic, variety, what? Okay, leaving your house, and resource. Okay, now let's get to another thing. Levels of priority. And we do this by what will kill you first. All right? Now, Kevin was going through what will kill you first. His is a different kind of preparation, but his answer is you have to be able to recognize if someone's going to shoot you, you got to run or duck or get out of the way. All right, so we do this in a time frame. General. All right. So there are 9 levels. I have this 9 time frames, and they can vary, but the first one is immediately. What will hurt you or kill you within the first hour? All right. The second is what will hurt you in the first 3 hours. The next 24 hours. The 96 hours. 1 week. 4 weeks. 90 days. 1 year. 2+ years. All right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we're going to go each of these, because as we go through these, we'll bring up other things to discuss. All right? So, immediately within the hour, within minutes or 1 hour, 30 hours, 24 hours, 96 hours, 1 week, 4 weeks, 90 days, 1 year, 2 years. All right, let's get going. The most important preparation you can make, what is it? Who can tell me? What?
Air.
Air? Come on, be serious. Water? Nope.
Shelter.
No. Getting close. Thank you. Attitude. I used to be a high school band and choir director, and I had a thing. If you think you can, you think you can't, you are right. It's all about attitude. Okay? They were state champions, that group. Actually, we have several of those. Okay? So it's attitude. All right? And we're here to tell you that you can do it. I mean, from the worst catastrophe you can think of, Ken was talking about nuclear, yesterday. He was talking about nuclear attack, biological plagues, etc. And what was his message? That you can survive most of those. Unless you're right underneath the bomb or right next to it, you can survive it. Now, I admit that if you're underneath the nuclear bomb when it goes off, even if you have a can-do attitude, you won't have to worry about it. We used to live in Colorado Springs, Cheyenne Mountain. Nobody has bomb shelters there because they know that is the #1 target in the United States. It will be hit 20 times before anybody else gets hit anywhere else. And so you're either inside the mountain or you're gone. You'll never know. Okay? So the attitude is you can do it. I have a good friend, Larry Olson. If you heard of the Anastasia program, that's where they take the kids out in the wilderness programs and teach them. He said the #1 thing we teach them is that you can do it. And it's attitude. And most of the attitude that he's dealing with there is you are a worthwhile person. That's it. So once they have that you are important enough, that you are a worthwhile person, then he says, we teach them skills and that goes fast. He says, but the biggest attitude change is that you are worthwhile. You can do it. All right, preparation. Mental can-do attitude. There's physical stuff. There's skills. Now, Kevin was telling you, here's a test. Kevin told you what's more important, physical stuff or skills? Skills is actually more important, okay? But there, even skills, the mental attitude, can-do attitude, stuff, and knowledge is all, of course, the basis of all preparation. Okay? I see people writing furiously, good. Mental, physical skills, and knowledge is the basis of all preparation. So actually, we all are all in agreement with him. Okay? Now, there's a problem. And this is part of, go back to, we're speaking of mental attitude, is there's now a term called normalcy bias. And basically what this means is that people have a hard time comprehending that there is an emergency and that action must be taken. It's the deer in the headlights. Kevin talked about that as well. It's like, and I think it was Kevin who told me the story. Told the story. He says several years ago there was an airline crash in I think somewhere in Indonesia, Philippines, someplace like that, and they had a hard landing. Boom! Because what happened was it unexpected. The landing gear collapsed on landing. All right, everything was working fine, but something didn't lock, and the landing gear collapsed. All right, it's like a 727, something like that. It collapsed, skidded along the runway, stopped. All right, on the hit, one of the stewardesses bounced her head off the wall like this and was knocked unconscious. Okay, and I think there was only one or two. Anyway, a guy near the back jumped up, took off his seatbelt, ran out the back, got the door open. Okay. And the chute's headed down, so he ran down the chute, turned around to help everybody else, and nobody came. Nobody. He got back on the chute, climbed up the chute into the airplane, and they were all sitting there waiting for the stewardess to tell them what to do. He started screaming because he had noticed when he was outside the plane that the plane was on fire. No one moved because he was not telling them the official word of what to do. An explosion occurred because he was standing in the doorway. He was blown out, had a broken ankle, broken leg, and a broken arm. Only survivor. Only survivor. I think Kevin, I told that the way he told that. And so there's a normalcy bias that people don't recognize. That there is an emergency that they need to act. And we have a society based on that right now. I can't do anything unless an official person tells me what to do. So the number one thing is to think it through. What do I do in an emergency? I have a good friend, and he once was telling the story I'm a member of the LDS Church, and he was my state president. So I'm up on the stand with him. I was the high counsel for this ward. It was his ward. So his mother and his wife and his kids are sitting in there. He says, he gets up and he says, I've never told you this story. He says, and he tells his wife, he says, I survived. And they're all, I could see, they're looking and say, what's he talking about? So he says, he's a pilot for Federal Express. And so he says, we're up in Seattle. Seattle has a short runway, always raining. And so here it is, it's dark, it's raining, we got a plane maxed out. And so there's three of us, we're making sure the engineer says, here's the load, we got to get off, we got this kind of stuff. Okay. So he says, we have a point of no return, we check on this, we're barreling down the road, like this. And the engineer, of course, like he says, no return. We've passed the point, so it's shorter to stop, whatever, all right? So he says, we start liftoff, and all of a sudden, over there, as we're past the point of no return, as we're starting to get ready to lift, lift it up, he said, we get a call that says, we just received word you might have received the wrong fuel in your plane. Okay. He says that we're going up, as we're doing, getting up a little bit of altitude, all of a sudden the right engine starts sputtering. And he says, and he's thinking, there's a high fence at the end of this and a freeway at the end. Are we going to hit the high fence? Are we going to hit the freeway? You know, do we have enough altitude? And then we got Seattle, okay? And so like this is, so all of a sudden, the engine bursts into flames, and they're pounding, blowing, the emergency to turn the fire. So they get the fire turned off, they flipped on that thing. They're only, not very far off the ground. They missed they're above the freeway, they're below the freeway. It's black, it's raining, it's pitch dark, okay? And they're on 2 engines, 3 engines, right wing, left wing, and the tail. So the right engine's out. They have 2 engines left, okay? So emergency, emergency, emergency. We're coming around. We're going to land the plane, and start dumping fuel. So they start dumping fuel, but all they're going to do is come right back around, like this. And he's screaming at the co-pilot, says, "Watch for buildings because we're not high enough to miss the buildings, and they can't see anything." And so, so they're coming around along this line, but that's the engine that controls the hydraulics. So they drop the landing gear, but they can't tell if it's dropped. So the co-pilot and the engineer are back there winding them down like that, dropping the landing gear down, but they can't see. It doesn't come up green. They don't know if they're locked. We're coming around, landing gear's not locked. Crawl the crash trucks. The crash trucks are out there, screaming out there along this line. And so he's coming around, they're dumping fuel out this back, and he knows they're not going to be able to dump it. There's just not enough time to dump all the fuel out of the plane as they're coming around, and they're loaded to the max. Okay? And if that wasn't enough, the left one starts sputtering just as they're leveling off and coming around and making their approach. So the left engine, now he has very little control, but he's on the downward side, right? Okay? As he gets down there, one of the crash trucks has got, and he's thinking, and his co-pilot reminds us, we got to hit this early because we don't know if we're going to be skidding or whatever along this line, and so we've got to hit right on the money like this, and there's a crash truck on their runway. He's got lost, he's on the wrong place. And so they come down, just barely going over here like this, and boom, they hit down, skid to a thing. They put foam over everything along this line, just, jump out, so like this, along this. And he turns out and he says, and then just as that, we expect the plane to explode any minute. They open up the cockpit and says, "Nice try in your rehearsal. Good job, you got great marks. It was all practice. All practice." He said, "We practice that all the time." They got an A on that one. All right, they didn't crash. I mean, they really, comments like that. That's why we practice these things in our minds. The guys, professionals, do this all the time. So when it really does happen, they know what to do. When I taught driver's ed training for a while, one of the things that we tried to teach our students was that when you're coming to a stop, you look around and say, what if that my brakes miss? Where do I go? How do I do this? If this, you think ahead one step. So if something happens, you don't have to say, what am I going to, boom, too late. You've already one step ahead. So, what do I do in an emergency? Practice and plan. Prepare, practice, and prepare and practice. Ooh, I need to spell practice better. Okay? So what do you do in an emergency? You prepare for it, you plan for it, and you practice it. All right. Again, a normalcy bias means you need to recognize quickly short-term temporary emergencies versus long-term game-changing, world-changing, life-changing emergencies. Hey, an earthquake in California. I grew up in California. Earthquake in California. If you remember, they had the earthquake a couple days ago in Washington, D.C. The guys in California said, 5.8, big whooping deal. Guys in New York saying, earthquake, you get used to it. The rule is, if you've been in California long enough, that you can be sitting in church. True story. You can be sitting in church, feel the thing back, check, make sure it's not the kids behind you